Good morning. Hey! I'm the guy between you and lunch, so it's always fun to do. Hopefully you're going to enjoy it. My name is Boaz Ziniman. I'm a technical evangelist with the AWS team here in Israel. If you did not see me before in events and meetups and other stuff, so this is a good opportunity. A bit about myself. So I do a lot of events and meetups talking about different AWS technologies, helping our customers to better understand how to use these technologies, how they can build better products with it. I'm running a series of webinars in Hebrew. So in case you want to learn about AWS, you're more than welcome. We have one coming up next week. So I've been doing a blog for many years about cloud computing. Right now it's on freeze. I'm still figuring out what to do with it right now. You can still find my previous posts on this blog. I'm very vocal on social media, so you're more than welcome to follow me. I'm at Ziniman on Twitter. I know Twitter is not big in Israel, but this is what I mostly use. And I try to work as much as I can with the Israeli community of developers, operations, to help them work with our platform. I have a very long history of web development. Somebody that used to work with me, I think in my first or second job is sitting here in the audience. It was many, many years ago. I've been working for several Israeli startups. And recently, in the last few years, I've been working a lot with IT teams, operation teams, what we call today DevOps. This is why we are today. And I've been an AWS customer since 2009 and a partner for the last 6 or 7 years before I joined AWS. And let's talk about why we're here. So the idea of this talk is to give you tools that we've been using to innovate for more than 20 years at Amazon. And yeah, I know you're not Amazon. And most of the people here in the audience are self-employed developers or DevOps engineers or working in small startups or working in larger companies. But the scale we operate at Amazon is really, really big. We're talking about a company that, according to recent numbers, it's more than 400,000 employees worldwide. It's not AWS, it's the entire Amazon organization. And the things we are doing might be very relevant to the scale of Amazon. But still, there are a lot of things that you can take out of this talk that might work with your company, with your team, with your DNA. So you don't have to take everything. You can take one thing. I hope you're going to take much more than that. But think about how can you take those tools, those best practices, and implement them into your organization. And I want to start with a question. Do you know where this is coming from? There is no compression algorithm for experience. So this one was said by Andy Jassy, the CEO of AWS, in a completely different context. But the experience we have, the fact that Amazon was around for more than 20 years, makes most of the things I'm going to talk about, and actually most of them did not change a lot during those years, very, very important. And the part of experience in my talk is super important, and the way we are doing things. So a very short history lesson. This is the first homepage of Amazon.com. This is from 1994. 1 million books. This is what used to be on this page. Some innovating stuff like recommendation for you. It's 1994. It was a very long time. Who was not born in 1994? Is there anybody here that? Okay, one. Nice. This is like not in history for you. This is science fiction. So this was 1994, and when we started, Amazon.com was built as a huge monolith, like a really huge monolith. Everything was one big piece of software with a lot of advantages and much more disadvantages. And the fact that a website, and that was running for several years, that we're talking about early 2000, until early 2000 we were maintaining something like that. The fact that we have one huge piece of software created a lot of issues and challenges to the company. For example, releases. How much time it takes to release Amazon.com in an environment when everybody are working in the same pipeline. I'm going to go back to it a bit later. And as I said at the beginning of the 2000s, we came to the conclusion that we can't keep operating in this monolith. That the service we're giving to our customers, and this is something I'm going to repeat over and over again, our customers, is basically getting affected by the fact we are not able to innovate quick enough to release more features and to do it faster. And we broke everything. It took several years. It's not an overnight project, so don't expect it to happen overnight. It took several years, and we basically deconstruct this monolith into thousands of microservices. And those microservices are what's running Amazon.com right now. And if you're looking at this page, which I'm sure you're familiar with, it's actually being built by hundreds of microservices that only few of them are actually in the front end, in the GUI. So if you're looking at this page, there is the banner at the top, this is one microservice. And there is the cart on the right, this is another one. And there is the product description and the product image, and there is another part of recommendation, and another part of advertisement, and so on and so forth. And this is just part of what we have on the homepage of Amazon. There are much more of it behind the scenes. Microservices that are serving this page, serving our internal systems, serving our partners, and so on and so forth, that is being executed each time you're accessing the Amazon homepage or any page on the Amazon.com website. So let's start talking about those 10 methods and best practices we are using in our day-to-day at Amazon to keep innovating, and we are talking really about huge scale. So let's start with number one, and I think this is very important. And there is a very good reason why this is number one. So the first item I want to talk about is start with the customer, then work backwards. So our focus on customer is the beginning of everything we're doing at Amazon. And this is not something we just said. We actually do that. So I'm going to ask you a question. What is the first thing you do when you have a new idea? Like you have a new idea for a service or a product or something like that. Want to try ideas?
Consult with someone?
Consult with someone, talk with friends, validate the idea. What else? Go to a whiteboard, create a...
Go search if it exists.
Search if it exists, create a whiteboard architecture.
Look for the problems.
Look for the problems, create a POC. People are doing it differently in many places. Do you want to guess what's the first thing we're doing at Amazon when we have an idea for a new service, a new product, or even a new event? It's pretty close. But the first thing we're doing, we're writing a press release. That's awkward. That's basically doing things the other way around. And this is exactly what I'm talking about working backwards. So we are actually sitting down and writing a press release. So don't get me wrong, this is not the press release that will go on the wire when we're going to release the product. But it forces us to organize our thoughts. When you have a very good idea and you think it's amazing, we should absolutely do it. And then you're sitting down and trying to write it in several sentences, you almost instantly understand if it's a good or bad idea. Or at least you have a direction where you're going. So this is one thing. It forces you to organize your thoughts. It shifts it from being enthusiastic about something to something very practical. And the other thing, it lets you know how much benefit, since this is a press release, you need to describe the benefit. So you will understand how much benefit your customers are getting out of this idea. So this is another thing. Third thing, when you write it well, and this is something very, very important, you can use it along the way as a lighthouse to see if you're in the right direction. When you have something like a press release written on day one, and you keep evolving with the product, developing it, keeping it alive, the idea of having this press release is basically something that will work with you along the way. You can obviously change it. Like, you can't think about everything on day one, but the fact you're going and making yourself sit and focus on that, change basically it from just something very vague into something very precise. And I want to show you a video of a product that we are releasing. It's not generally available yet, but we are releasing and testing it in a very limited test. And think about how it started with the press release.
Amazon is developing a service to use drones to safely deliver packages to customers in 30 minutes or less. It's called Prime Air. We've started a new private trial for customers in the Cambridge area of England, and on December 7th, we completed our first delivery. customers will choose from a selection of thousands of items tucked away in a prime era fulfillment center located just over the horizon from their homes. We have been operating fulfillment centers for quite a while now, but this one is unlike all the rest. These modest-looking buildings contain innovative prime air technology. Here's how it works. Moments after receiving the order, an electrically powered Amazon drone makes its way down an automated track and then rises into the sky with the customer's package on board. These drones are autonomous. From takeoff to landing and return, they operate completely on their own. Cruising quietly below 400 feet, carrying packages up to 5 pounds, and guided by GPS, our systems are designed to find their destinations safely. Within 30 minutes of placing the order, the customer receives their package. For this initial trial, customers can choose from the latest tech gadgets to their dog's favorite biscuits. We will use the data gathered during this beta test and the feedback provided by customers to expand the private trial to more customers over time. We're starting with 2 customers now, and in the coming months, we'll offer participation to dozens of customers living within several miles of our UK facility, and then growing to hundreds more. After that, well, it'd be easy to say, the sky's the limit. But that's not exactly true anymore, is it?
How cool is that? And how cool is the process that led us to bring something like that? Actually, how cool is the countryside of the UK? It really makes me want to move there. So this is one example of how an idea started. And you basically listen to a press release. This video is a very fancy press release. And a lot of what was in this video basically started when we started to think about prime air, about shortening the time of delivering something to our customer. This is where it all started. And this is not only the PR. There is another thing. And by the way, the PR is a real PR. You have to have quotes from customers, like imaginary customers, but you need to think about what the customer will say about your product when you're going to release it. You need to have a quote from a senior management at Amazon. You don't need to go to them and ask them, but think about what will somebody at the company will say about your product and how they're going to use it and how it's going to change their life. But there is another thing. You have to write an FAQ. And it really takes this PR practice and make it even more specific to thinking about what might be the questions a customer will ask you when you're going to release the product, and obviously provide answers, which is a bit more complicated in this case. In some cases, we are writing the user manual, but this is not mandatory, and this is not for all the products. For technical products, it usually is. But an idea can be a conference. I don't know if you visited the AWS Summit here in Tel Aviv, or if somebody is going to reinvent in 10 days. Somebody is going to reinvent in 10 days? Nobody? Okay. It's the same process. Somebody sat down, wrote the press release, and wrote the FAQ for this thing. So this is number one. Number two is experiments will fail. And we know that. And we understand that. And we're okay with it. And one area where I think we are especially, like really, really special, is allowing people to fail at Amazon. And I really believe we are the best place in the world to fail. And I'm going to show you a few examples for that. And it happened before, and it's going to happen again. And basically, failure and innovation are Siamese twins. You can't separate them. If you're not trying, you won't be able to innovate. And in some cases, you will succeed, and in some cases, you won't. And take into account that if you are doing something that you know the end result, this is not an experiment anymore. Think about your chemistry lessons in the school. Your teacher knew what's going to be the end result. This is not an experiment, although this is what you've been told all over your time in school. And most large organizations embrace the idea of innovation. Like everybody wants to be innovating. There is no single company that does not think she's innovating and putting innovation as part of their core values. But not many of them willing to suffer the failure. And this is a very big issue. And this is something we are trying to encourage in Amazon, allow people to fail. So How many of you have a Fire phone in their pocket right now? Come on. Nobody? No way.
Fire phone?
There was a Fire phone. It actually was not very long ago. It was July 2014. And nobody has a Fire phone today. Not even Amazon employees. And did you know about Amazon auctions? Have you heard about it? So Amazon auctions was an attempt to create an auction site on top of the Amazon platform. Allow people to sell their products on top of the Amazon platform in the same way people are doing auctions. And the market analysts and the stock market were really like, what are you doing? Why are you allowing people to come to your store and sell something that is not yours? And when Amazon auctions did not take off, we moved to something else called the Z-shops. So Z-shops were basically, you're looking for something on top of Amazon.com, you can't find it. We will tell you that there is something that's called Z-shop, you might be able to find it there. Once again, people came to us and said, it doesn't make sense. It's like getting into Macy's or any convenience store, looking something on the shelf, and if you can't find it, somebody tells you there is in the back, there is a small shop that you might be able to find the sneakers you're looking for, go there. It doesn't make sense. And actually, both of them did not succeed, and they are not operational anymore. But the thing we learned out of it is the base for Amazon Marketplace. One of the biggest success of Amazon.com today is the fact that people can go on top of our platform and sell their goods. And not only that, as opposed to Z-shops, when you're looking for something on Amazon, and it's available for several sellers, you see those options on the main page. We allow you as a customer to get in and get direct access to different prices, different shipping policies, and different terms. And those two were the base for what we're doing today. And the important thing about it is, yes, you can fail, but you need to learn from those failures. And you need to make sure that you're taking this lesson and building something better with it. And the more decisions point you have, the more accurate you can be. So the idea of constantly measuring, improving, and iterating your product is something very, very important. And it's actually going to be here as a theme in several slides. But you need a culture of high-velocity decision-making because you want to do these iterations in very short time. And the way we look at it is by taking into account that many decisions are reversible. So you can take a decision, and after a few days, when you see that it doesn't work, just change it. And it's true for many decisions we are doing on day-to-day. So I know everything looks like a nightmare, and I have a teenage daughter, so everything is the end of the world. In business, this is not the case. For most decisions you're making, you can basically reverse them in a very late stage. And it's very important for you, and this is something we really try to do, to make decisions when you have 70% of the knowledge. If you're going to wait to get 90 or 100, which I think is impossible, you're going to be too late. And when you're operating on the knowledge that you're taking decisions with a lot of information, but not all of it, then you can take faster decisions. And it's very important to define what are you measuring. So define your metrics and think about the theories you're working with so you can actually make this process of measure, improve, and iterate very agile and very, very fast. And this is related to the next one. So launch is always the starting line. Think about it when you're designing a new product. You're starting usually very, very small. At least we are starting usually very, very small. When a company tries to build a product that is the end result, the best product they can deliver, with all the features they can think about, it usually takes a lot of time, and usually the end result will be very, very different. Because something that looks amazing on paper, on the whiteboard, when you start developing practically, it takes all kinds of different turns and shapes, and you should take it into account. And remember not to boil the ocean. Think about the features you're putting in every version, because you can iterate. You can improve it over time, over and over again, and this is actually part of the process. And just take a look at some of the AWS products that I'm sure some of you are using. Like, for example, DynamoDB did not have auto-scaling. Super important feature that was released this year. And it was needed and customer asked for it, but it wasn't there from day one. And this is just part of the iterations we're doing, and there are more features coming with DynamoDB, and you can talk about VPC and all the networking support and how many tools we're introducing basically on a weekly basis for networking, security, and tools over and over again, thinking about the fact that when we launched the product at the beginning, it was just the started line. The next one I want to talk about is security. And we never launch service unless we are sure that the foundations of this service is rock solid. And security, reliability, and scalability are three things that are core concerns. And features can be added later. You have to remember that. It's related to the previous slide, but you can iterate, you can add features, but it's very difficult to fix security. And if you're not putting security inside your product from day one, going and fixing it afterwards will require you in some cases to rewrite the product completely or do very big changes. And I'm sure all of you have been to a meeting talking about the features that should go or should not go to the next release. There were 3 features that are customer-facing, 2 that are security, another one that marketing requests, and another one that sales requested. Nobody does that. And eventually, somebody said, OK, we have to do the customer-facing. We'll fix security later. Happened to you? I'm sure. No, never. Not in Yapta. So it's happening, and this is something that eventually creates real big issues. And it will bring you to a point when you have to fix security because somebody else found out about your security breach, about the fact you're not protecting your customers. And this is the most important thing. Protect your customers, protect their data, and this is what will help you to protect your business. And today, with a lot of involvement in the encryption world and the security world, like creating a site without HTTPS doesn't make sense anymore. Okay? Let's encrypt AWS KMS, other tools that are available there that makes all the encryption part cheap, easy to implement. It used to be rocket science, like 10 years ago. Not rocket science, but you were thinking about it. OK, I'm overloading my servers. Maybe I don't need it. I'll do it only for the login. It doesn't make sense anymore. You can encrypt your website. You should encrypt your website using the latest tools. And if you've been to Sebastian's keynote yesterday, he was talking about this backend operating system that was basically managing their cloud with an Excel worksheet of URLs without HTTPS that people are just going, clicking, and changing the infrastructure of their system. It doesn't make sense anymore. You have to look at security as your job zero and invest in it from day one, from the beginning. This is how you should look at systems that are facing your customers and internal systems as well. And this is super, super important. And then there are the APIs. And when AWS decided that they're going to design everything around AWS using APIs, it was a super important decision. Because this decision basically dictates the fact that you now need to think how the customer journey is going to look like in 10 and 20 years. When you're putting an API out there, you can't decide that, OK, I'm going to do a radical change in a few years, nobody will care. People are relying on your APIs. And APIs are actually forever. I want to say that APIs are the best friends of DevOps engineers, but I don't like this joke. And when you're starting to work with API, there are tons of advantages you're getting out of the box. Think about it. First of all, you can completely disconnect the front end from your back end. Like it can be done with other technologies as well. But here you can actually play with it. You can have multiple front ends. You can do A/B testing. You can do tons of other things. It requires you to plan better, to break your system into smaller chunks and think about the future and how it's going to look like for people in 5 years, in 10 years. And I think personally for me, one of the most important things is when you're releasing public APIs, and not all APIs are public, But when you're releasing public APIs for public consumption, the community that you're going to get around those APIs is amazing. And usually, you can't even imagine what people are going to do with your APIs, and usually it's a very, very good surprise. People are super creative and doing amazing things with public APIs when you give them good APIs, good access, good service, and maintaining versions. And just remember that it's really forever. So you don't want to break your customer systems. You don't want to break internal systems because you're doing radical changes in your API, or you're not documenting, or you don't have a clear versioning policy, which once again, super important for APIs. Build it into your product as something that customers, internal customers can rely on, and make sure your APIs are actually forever. And another thing is paying attention to the details. And this is a huge challenge for companies, and especially for a company in the size of Amazon. And I hear it a lot from managers, especially from growing companies, saying that I can't make it. I can look after the managers that I'm managing. I can look maybe one level down. I can't be in every design meeting, and I can't be in every code review. And actually, you don't have to. But you need to pay attention for that. And when I was managing development and then operation teams, I spent a lot of time, like this was a real focus for me as a manager, to make sure I have all the details regarding what's going on with my teams. And that allows you to really help your team to succeed. And most important, to keep them away from trouble. So making sure nobody's doing stupid things. And it takes focus, it takes time. You can't do it like as a side job. You need to know that this is something you're paying attention to, you're spending time on. And it's much harder in the scale of Amazon. And we constantly looking for ways to stay connected to the details. And it's challenging. And we achieve that, but first of all, hiring the right people. Hiring people that are in line with our core principles and are open and we can rely on. And in addition, keeping the information flowing as open as possible. And you need to look for ways to do it inside your organization. So that goes back to the beginning of my talk. I assume most of you here are not from organizations of hundreds of thousands of people, but still, even with 100 or 200 or 400 people, there are already challenges with paying attention to the details. And this is one thing that you should take into account. I can tell you from my own experience in AWS, Andy Jassy replies to every release email we are sending internally for every single product at AWS. And it includes products that are customer-facing and includes products that are not customer-facing, internal completely. We're getting a reply from Andy Jassy for every email, and it's a lot. You see the ones we're releasing on daily basis, it's an average of 3, 4, 5 a day. There are much more of that are going internally, and this is part of paying attention to the details. So that brings me to the next part, which is very much related, and I'm sure many of you expected it, and this is the 2 pizza teams. This is something that is very, very popular, and a lot of Amazon talks about culture, and we've been talking about it for a very long time. So first of all, you have to know that it was not always like that. That change of 2 pizza teams happened around the time when we broke the monolith. So as part of breaking the monolith, there was a very big cultural change in the company, in the way the company is structured. And then there's the question, what's the deal with 2 pizza teams? Okay? Why 2 pizzas? So first of all, 2 pizza is a vague number. That the idea of it is a team that can be fed by 2 large pizzas. Okay? We're generous. We're talking the extra large, the big ones, not the small ones. And it's basically a number somewhere between, I don't know, 5 is too little. Okay? It depends who the people. If I'm on the team, easy. And probably 12 is too much. People will stay hungry. So it's somewhere between this 6 and 10, maybe 11. And a lot of people are asking, why did not put a number? Put a number 8. This is the size of a team inside Amazon, and move forward. Why all this talking about pizza? Sorry?
Easy to remember?
Easy to remember. Nice to talk about. There are some additional advantages. So when you define it as a 2-pizza team instead of a number, and let's say you have a team of 8 people, okay, which is the number that I was talking about, and you have a very unique problem with your product, and there is somebody down the hall with some very unique experience that can join this team, you can basically pull him to the team because this number is flexible. Okay? This is not something that is written in stone and that's it. 8 is 8 and this is a big corporate, so we're not doing 9. No. 2-pizza team, it's easy. We're bringing somebody that is not eating too much and solving the problem. Okay? This is why it's connected to pizza. And if a team becomes too big, think about it. Like if you keep adding more and more engineers or product managers or DevOps engineers or whatever to the team, you're usually not solving the problem. Once again, I'm going back to the keynotes yesterday. Throwing more engineers on the problem does not solve the problem. It creates additional problems, usually around communication. And you have a size of people that when communication becomes an issue. And that's probably somewhere around these 12, 13, 14 people. This is a very big team. And usually, when you're coming to a point where your team is too big for 2 pizzas, it means one thing. You need to break the problem into 2 smaller problems and create 2 teams. And this is coming from another idea. Who's familiar with Conways Law? Not bad. So the idea of Conways Law is very, very simple. The design of your products is basically going to be a copy of your organizational structure. Just give you a few examples. Like if you have teams that are separated. You have your UI team and your developers and your DBAs. Your product will look like there are clear boundaries between the parts. And they are constantly going to fight with each other about changing in the database and things in the UI that you can't implement with the library you're using in the development and so on and so forth. And it was like this for years between developers and IT. And I think this is one of the things led for creation of DevOps. Okay, the connection between those 2 functions created better teams, people that understand development, understand operation as one team, as one responsibility. And one of the ideas of the 2-pizza team is to have a team that can actually take a task from start to end. There is a product manager, and there is a designer, and there is a developer, and ops engineer, and in some cases even a support engineer, if there is a dedicated support function. And this team can take everything from one end to another. And remember, it's not only changing the way you develop software. It's a very big cultural change, and you should take it into account. What do we get out of it? So first of all, I apologize. I know this is about time to get lunch. I'm sorry about this picture. I'm getting hungry. So those teams are basically in charge of a very specific problem. The aim of the team is to solve a specific problem, and what we're getting out of it is, first of all, speed of iterations and very focused teams. Those teams basically can release anytime they want, any feature they want. They have the autonomy to decide where they're going and what is their direction, and they are deciding on their direction as a team. And ownership is very important. You give your employees a lot of ownership and a lot of responsibility, and it comes with a lot of autonomy, and that makes them very, very committed. This structure that we've been operating for a very long time is bringing us to amazing numbers. Like the entire AWS, we're talking about more than 2 deployments every second. Do the math. How many deployments are happening on AWS? On Amazon. On AWS last year, we released more than 1,000 features or changes to existing features, and this is only the customer-facing part. And everything is operated by this notion of the 2-pizza teams. And this is all very important and all very nice, but it was completely impossible without automation. And automation is key. And a very important key we should take into account, and it's very hard to achieve something like that without automation. And when we talk about innovation at scale and talking about the scale of Amazon or any scale, doing it manually is simply impossible. And I would like to give you a rule of thumb to know how good is your automation, think about how much do you use SSH. Okay? If you're still using SSH to access your servers, you probably have a lot of work on your automation. And the less you're using it, the better your automation is until you don't need to use it anymore. You don't need to give your developers root access to the production servers. That doesn't make sense even on the Netflix platform. So look at your SSH usage, put a target to reduce it to 0 to have better automation. And when we're looking back at history, architecture and technology came to our help. So this is what used to be the pipeline of the monolith. Tons of development teams creating code over and over again, committing it into a single delivery pipeline. And I don't know how many of you worked in this type of architecture, but I still remember merge days. Okay? Build weeks. There is a build week. What are we doing this week? Building. God. Now there is something new. Now with the AI, we are training. But it's evolving. And the endless discussions between teams, what should go in and what should not go in. And I have an urgent update, a security patch, I need to get it out now. Impossible. Merge week is in 2 weeks. Good luck with that. And this is the reason why monoliths creating a lot of issues and a lot of problems. And when we switch to pizza teams, each one of them has its own delivery pipeline, in charge of usually a single service. And they can operate the way they want with their own schedule and make their own decisions. And if a team is in charge of a single service and there is a security issue with this service or a patch that needs to be released right now, it will happen right now because nobody else is stopping them. They are not connected to any other constraints, any other teams. And it's basically changing the efficiency of those teams into a level that they can actually be super efficient and be able to innovate much, much faster. And
what if there is a dependency relation between teams?
So actually there are dependency relations between teams, and we try to make them based on APIs. So document your API, make sure, going back to APIs are forever, make sure you're not doing radical changes, make sure you have good versioning policy. So if you're breaking something, it's a major release, and if you're just fixing something without affecting others, it's a minor. This is how we used to work. Last one, and then lunch. So no gatekeepers. And I think this is super important, this is why I put it last. So try to build a culture that you're not operating as a gatekeeper. And I'm not talking only about internally. So first of all, don't be a gatekeeper to your customers. Let your customers innovate as well. Don't dictate your customers how to use your product. Trust me, I've been there before. Customers are creative. They will find ways to use your product in ways you never imagined. And if you're laughing, you probably agree with me, especially when you're using APIs. So this is one part. The other part is trust your teams. And trusting your teams is very, very important. But don't trust them blindly. Give them the tools and processes so they will be able to operate without those gatekeepers. And it doesn't mean that there will be no mistakes and no failures. There will be. But you need to learn from them and not to repeat them twice, of course. And the alternative for putting gatekeepers is basically giving up innovation or slowing it down dramatically because you need to stop on every point and ask questions and dig into it, and you're gonna basically lose the pace of innovation and the innovation at scale. Find the right people. Find the right people you can trust. And this is hard, I know. I've been recruiting for many years, and this is a very big challenge, but this is something very important. You should try and hire people that you can give them the keys to your castle. And don't be a gatekeeper when doing that. So these are my recommendations and best practices we're using on a daily basis. You have the entire list now. You don't need all the slides before. It was only one-liners, most of them. I really hope you were able to connect and see the value, at least in some of them. And I really encourage you to take few of those. You don't need to take all of them. One is enough, but take few of those and try it in your own team or company and see what can work for you. And I think this is something very, very important. So this has been working great for us. I hope some of it will work for you as well. So thank you very much for listening. Go innovate.